So we put it all the way through. But now, again, I think you have heard enough of us. So, Maryam, panel, take it away. Big round of applause.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I hope everybody enjoyed the day. My name is Maryam Asgariazad, Information Security and Risk Officer for Manulife, Canada. I'm excited to be the moderator for the panel today. We're joined by three amazing leaders in information security and technology who deal with day-to-day challenges firsthand. Before we dive to the conversation and have the panel started, I would ask each panelist please introduce themselves.
Cool. Nicholas Moy, I'm the CISO for Scrut Automation.
Kalyan Chakravarthy, or KC, CIO of Electrical Safety Authority.
And I'm Jack. And I can't use a mic apparently. I'm Jack Brooks. I'm the head of what we call Hackbusters and virtual CISO for BOXX Insurance.
Thank you. I'm really excited to have this conversation, and hopefully all of us pick one or two points from the discussion we have today. We are at the interesting point in cybersecurity. Innovation's moving so fast, sometimes faster than our ability to understand and manage risk. From AI, agentic AI, and rapid adoption of AI through business function and organization we work for, to continuous changes in geopolitical and the tension that we have with the world, the role of CISOs are changing, and your expectations from CISOs are changing. And that's what we wanted to actually dive in today and have the conversation. Let's start with the emerging technology. So my first question from our panelists is that, from your perspective, which new technologies are introducing the most significant security risk today? And what is that risk that keep you up at night when you didn't have it in your radar 2 years ago? I start with Nicholas. Do you want to go first?
Sure. It's not just, it's more like an emerging trend, not so much something new. You know, I worry less about quantum cryptography, post-quantum, and all the marketing emails I get. And I worry more about the constant compromise of popular third-party packages. Like I wake up this morning, you know, and I got the alert that a popular password manager, they have a CLI utility called Bitwarden, and that was compromised as part of the same chain of NPM compromises. You know, 2 weeks ago it was Axios, which so many Java web applications use, but before that it was Light LLM, and it's just gonna keep happening, and it's happening at a pace where it's scary to even use any third-party packages on the internet. We're all having to put minimum days for updating the new versions, lest the new version be perfectly compromised by whomever. This never happened at this pace before, so it's not a new problem that these vulnerabilities exist, that it's possible for someone to social engineer an open source maintainer, or even, you know, open source that's maintained by a corporation like, you know, Trivy and Checkmarks. So it's getting scary.
Okay, I sleep like a baby, so nothing keeps me up at
Like
night.
baby, you wake up every 2 hours.
Like I don't wake up, like maybe better than a baby then. So nothing keeps me at wake up at night. But I think it's not so much about the technology, but it is about the direction that it is going. That's what like is a very concerning trend, to really say how much are we going to have this, like for a mythos part of it, like, and then the governance shifting from, and like I talked about this in the afternoon, the governance shifting from a corporate, from a regulated entity to a corporation is where I see that as a bad trend that is moving forward. That is what is worrying to me more than the actual technology that is happening.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I come from a little bit of a different perspective. I mean, over the years, I've spoken to probably thousands of our customers, have helped hundreds through actual cyber incidents. And I guess what the trend that I see is that it's kind of twofold. Number one, organizations don't know what they have. So the inventory of the types of technologies they've got, what their attack surface really looks like. And it goes back to a little bit what Nicholas was saying, is that sort of that shiny ball syndrome. Like everyone wants to talk about AI, we'll talk about AI as well, because you have to. It is definitely a thing. Quantum computing is going to be an issue, but it's the basics. Especially in the SME space, we still see really poor adoption of things like multi-factor authentication. I bet you for a lot of people in the room, that's probably a bit of a surprise, right? But we don't see that. Or proper endpoint protection, or patching. It's those kinds of things. It's the blocking and tackling, as they say, that I think is really hurting a lot of Canadian and even American businesses today, is knowing what they got, and it's not sexy, right? Everyone wants to talk AI and quantum, and let's do that. But if we use the 80-20 rule, we should be spending 80% of our time every year making sure that those simple things are addressed better and better.
So what I'm hearing is that the risk is not in a single technology. It's more, can you hear me? Not a single technology. It's more about it's about, okay, it's working. It's not about the risk of a single technology. It's about the risk in adoption and also losing the visibility and the awareness about the environment and the controls that we have. So with the pace that business is moving and the technology is changing, we often see that the CISOs are not approving the technology anymore. And we see the shift in accepting and reacting to the technology and evaluating the technology as during the adaptation. So in your experience and the organization, how do you evaluate risk before and also during the adaptation of the new technologies? I start with Casey.
I think the risk part of it is a very, very important, it is about the risk appetite of the organization. That's very important because if you're a regulated entity or an organization that has a regulatory oversight, the risk appetite goes down dramatically. Then you are being over risk averse to go at that. So that's the first point. The second point is also about your leadership team, the culture of the organization. And people think about it technology is just about technology. It is about whether the CISO, it is about the CIO, but it is not about them. It is about a cultural phenomena in the organization that how risk averse they are. And last but not the least is about the third thing is about the advisory services that the CISO, how much of a table and a voice that the CISO has at the table, at a leadership table and at the board table is very, very important. Because if he or she is not being heard, then where that risk aversion, whatever they might bring it doesn't matter. So those are the three things for me.
Very good point. Jack, you want to build on that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it has to do with just normal risk evaluations, right? So whenever you're going to look at these things, you look at what it touches. It comes back a little bit to my sort of the inventory, make sure you know what you've got in place. And then what kind of information is it going to need? So what else does it need to touch in order to make it work? And probably most importantly, think ahead of time what the damage can really be if it's compromised or goes wrong somehow. And really think through those things. And then does that solution have to be quite as complex, right? We as technologists, I love a good complex system just like everybody else, right? I started my life as a coder and I loved programming and then building networks and doing all that sort of fun stuff. And the bigger it was, the better it was. More blinky lights, right? But what does it really need to be as complicated and as having as much sprawl as it does? And just really think about how do you contain it if the absolute worst happens.
Do you want to get your perspective on that?
Yeah. When it comes to adopting new technology, I'm responsible for IT in our company as well, so I have to kind of look at it from both sides where, and I have a lot of peers who are kind of taking advantage of the situation where it says like, okay, the CEO and the board for a lot of companies is like, everyone has to use AI for everything. And if that's going to be the case, then we're finding ways to insert security requirements and needs as a percentage of that overall spend on AI can be pretty small. So we're like, well, we need some new controls, like go ahead, shove AI down everyone's throats as long as we can buy this, like, don't worry about it, like, Godspeed. And because we have to do our jobs. And I think a lot of times, I used to believe like, if we educate the board, we educate the CEO and the CFO on the risk of everything, and the company cares about our risk and all this stuff. The CEO, I was working at Expedia Group. The CEO wanted to use Dropbox, even though we had SharePoint and we had OneDrive for business, but he just wanted to use Dropbox. Then we became a Dropbox customer. A lot of times technology adoption in a Fortune 500 company happens even faster than in a startup. If the CEO says he wants to use it, now we have to figure out what is the risk and then figure out what our controls are. And if we're doing a half-decent job at that, him wanting to use it shouldn't be the end of the world, but the reality is, decisions don't always get made in an academically beautiful and perfect way, because no company, no government institution, I used to work at Homeland Security, no decision has ever been made with perfect rationality. And I don't think they're gonna start doing that. But I think as practitioners, we can save ourselves a lot of heartache and headache if we stop believing that we just have to keep reasoning with them, and then one day they're gonna get it. It's just like, let me tell you about this. I think we have to get a little more clever with what can we do and how can we turn this around to get the controls we need, and just say, oh, that's fine, yeah, okay, you need to use that, but how are we gonna get visibility on the iPad you're gonna use it on? How are we gonna get visibility, if people are doing agentic coding on their endpoints? And so for the company I'm at today, we've used this to acquire a lot of controls that we didn't have before, all in the name of enabling AI. It's not about all this security nonsense that I'm actually worried about. Branding.
So what I'm hearing looks like we are shifting away from a yes or no decision toward having or knowing what we are adopting and making sure that we have the visibility on that. So I'm hearing AI a lot, so let's shift the tier toward AI in security. So AI is being sold as being the biggest solution and also biggest risk. So not in theory, but in your actual organization and day-to-day you're dealing with, what are the AI use cases that delivering real value today, and where do you see the immediate impact? Jack, I'll start with you first.
Sure. I mean, obviously, as BOXX, we're using AI, but we see a lot of customers using it as well. And I think where it has the most success is when there's a clear use case, right? Nicholas was talking a little bit about that, right? But make sure that you do have that real use case, and what does the ROI really look like? Maybe a bit of an unpopular opinion, but if you're looking to AI as purely a cost-saving measure, how can you reduce, I see a lot of organizations, larger organizations, how do I reduce the cost of my SOC through the use of AI? Which drives me crazy as a CISO, because you finally had a tool in your hand that gave you the capacity that you've been screaming for, and now you're using it as a cost-cutting measure. So that's part of it, but make sure that you've got that use case. It's a reasonable use case. You take all the learnings that everyone is publishing out there, take small bites, try something, succeed quickly, fail quickly. If it fails, chuck it out, try something else. Don't try these monumental tasks or line up 47 different AI projects. Pick one, and then another, and then another. Get some experience under your belt, what works within your organization. Just because it works for me or somebody else, or doesn't work for me or somebody else doesn't mean it's the right decision or the wrong decision for you.
Nicola?
Yeah, we're using it in everything since the CEO told us to. No, we're finding a lot of value, just in case he's listening. We're finding a lot of value on the engineering side. You know, I think what the interesting thing is when I talk to the CTO on a pretty regular basis and ask him about how are we seeing the mediocre engineers becoming better engineers? Are we seeing the best engineers becoming even better? Like, what is the pattern in productivity? And are we seeing ROI on that? Like, we have Claude Code, we have Cursor, we have so many things. The interesting thing is, like, at least over the last 9 months, what we've seen on the engineering side is the best engineers have gotten incredibly better, and it hasn't changed anything for the worst engineers productivity-wise. You know, productivity, not just generating AI-generated code, but like AI-generated code that actually makes it into production, that gets shipped, that doesn't lead to bugs. So that's been interesting. I think from a compliance standpoint, you know, my team uses it for third-party risk management, assessing all the vendors, tailoring those assessments, not just doing a one-size-fits-all for everything. That's been very helpful. And actually going through the responses, because to be honest, like, how many third-party risk management teams, you know, like, is your TPRM team going through every response that every vendor is sending back? Probably not. Most of them aren't. And I don't think anyone has the time to sit around going through documents. When we're using agents for that, it works pretty well for just grokking through a ton of words and a lot of text and a lot of documents. So, you know, I think we're seeing these use cases, and then we just continuing to find more ways to use it. We use it for our internal pen testing to pen test our production infrastructure. And we'll just keep trying. Because I think, Jack, to your point, it's kind of like, as security professionals, if we, you know, it's sort of like we can't manage what we don't use, and we can't manage risk for things we ignore and pretend if, like, we stick our head in the sand or cover our eyes and ears, that, like, just because we can't hear or see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And if it exists today, it's, you know, it's going to make our lives worse tomorrow if we, I don't know, we can't wish it away. It's too late for that.
Yeah, it all depends upon, like, where, like, if anybody tells me what is your AI strategy, I'm going to scream at them saying that, like, there is nothing called as an AI strategy. Like, where I feel that, like, there is a business strategy where you want to go in the next 2-3 years, what you are going to do. And there is a roadmap that is there for an yearly roadmap that these are the things that I want to accomplish. And, like, if there are some AI tools or, like, whatever the things that are there that can help achieve those goals, we are going to use it, like productivity tools that are there, where I talk about derived AI and the actual AI part of it. Derived AI is like where we implemented a omni-channel solution via Zoom. So there are a lot of derived AI benefits that, like, we are getting through it. But, like, I don't call it as an AI implementation. I implemented a new omni-channel solution, and, like, which is keep making my customer interaction very easy. So that is great, and it has an AI component of it. Great. So it can be like where a tail cannot wag the dog. It is always like you have to do your business. That is your core thing. And what you want to do, how you're going to do your business is defined in your business strategy. And you are taking that. And in the meantime, if there is a technological advance that is helping you to make it easier, you are using it. So there are, like, and that's why productivity tools comes into mind. Everybody talks about it, right? Like, whether they call it as a co-pilot, whether it's Zoom, like all these things, these are the easy ones because they fit into your business strategy. Because productivity is a part of that, like that is there onto it. The next is always the customer-facing tools that are there, because, like, that is where AI has matured in a very, very sense, and, like, it is plug and play. So I'll go into it. Then the moment it becomes a very industry-specific, that is when you're deviating because you didn't plan for this in your wherever, depending upon where you are in your business strategy side, like you are in the first year, second year, third year, whatever, like if you are a 3-year cycle, 5-year cycle. So what happens is, like, when it becomes industry specific, that means you are having a solution to a problem because you know the solution first and you are creating a problem. Whereas if it is fitting into your business strategy, you're finding a solution to the problem.
That's really good. I can resonate with that answer. I've seen use cases that technology coming up with the solution, as you said, and because their technology, they're savvy, but also they're metrics driven. The CIO is asking to show me where you're using that. But then when you go to the business presenting that, the business don't see the value. They're like, oh, I have outsources these services to offshore and it's cheaper for me. Why are you just trying to solution for me? So I see those use cases, which is hit home. So it's good that looks like everybody's leveraging AI to the capacity from productivity to the business value. But on the flip side, where do you see that there is a risk that we are undermining and we are not like looking at? So what are the areas of the risk? We are hearing about like employee using the sensitive information, dropping in the tool, like AI shadows, like prompt injection, all those risks that we are hearing. But what is it that you feel that is being underestimated?
I was going to add this point, so fantastic. Apparently we're in sync. So I guess really what it boils down to is whether you have an AI strategy. I agree. I mean, nobody really has a truly fully baked strategy. It's developing too quickly. But if you think that your people are not using AI, think again. They are. You know, you can, and I would encourage everyone to have some sort of policy where you put in some guardrails about what is good use, but talk to people about what some of the risks are. That's one of the most important things that I've found, is that helping people understand where AI can go bad and where they can cause problems and risk for the organization is absolutely key. Not just thou shalt do this or use this particular tool, right? You can block everything at the corporate level that you like, but if they've got access to Gmail, they're using Gemini, or they're using a free version of ChatGPT somehow, right? Because they're trying to do things faster themselves, be more productive. So I would say that's, I mean, to me, one of the big things is tackle the challenges head on, be upfront, help people understand, we know you're going to use it. You know, whatever you do, don't post, you know, our PII or our PHI or even sensitive data directly into any of these AI engines, whether it says it's using it for training or not, right? Always make sure it's anonymized.
I think one of the things, you know, it's interesting. I would say like everything is true all at once. You know, whether you're like big companies where you don't think people are using it, but they really are, or you're at other kind of say, you know, because we're a 4-year-old like kind of Silicon Valley-based startup for better or worse, and it's the opposite is like we need everyone to use it. If they're using it, we need them to be productive. We need them to get better at using it. And we actually would prefer anything they think they might be using that they need to use, as long as we understand the use case. We would much prefer them doing that on an enterprise plan, something we're paying for, something we can get admin and audit logs for and get visibility on. I think what a lot of people don't appreciate is the last 10 years before kind of the last few years, everything had moved server-side, everything had become cloud-based SaaS, and it was nice. Once it's cloud-based SaaS, we have all these centralized logs, everything's happening server-side, there's not very much happening on the client. Now we like fast forward, everything's happening on the client, people love local stuff. You have IDEs with like 50 billion AI kind of extensions, you have VS Code extensions, and then you have MCP servers. Some are centrally hosted, first party, like a HubSpot MCP server, or now you have MCP servers that are some random person on the internet. If you look at the top 10 most popular MCP servers, they may be for popular software products, but they're built by random, I mean, good, you know, people who couldn't wait for that company to build an MCP server. Then some person built it, open sourced it on GitHub. Now your team's downloading it because they're like, we're gonna be productive. We're doing our job, whether it's marketing, finance, or accounting. And I see the fear in kind of the eyes of a lot of these employees too, because to Jack's point, like they're trying to be productive. They're not going out of their way to try to destroy the company. They're trying to keep up, and they have a lot of anxiety about how fast the industry and the world is changing. So the thing I focus on is actually how do we train, enable, and support them? And giving them one size fits all, like, hey, here's how AI works, is like, no one's gonna do that. No one has time for that. I don't take any of our trainings. They're so boring, right? So I told my GRC manager, you've got to fix this. This information security training sucks. Like, do anything, put some pandas in it. And I think for AI too, it's like something we focus on that was different is SentinelOne, Jump Cloud, MDM Solutions, CrowdStrike, Intune. They do a lot of things on the endpoint, but they're not actually taking advantage. There's not a lot of content. Like when the Axios thing happened, we had to go use SentinelOne to go find the IOCs before SentinelOne pushed out updates to their policies and to their detection engine. And it's going to be the same for MCP servers that are malicious and compromised. It's going to be the same for VS Code extension, browser extensions, meeting note takers. Like, yeah, your employees are using meeting note takers. They got like 5 of them. They're using Granola, they're using Cluely, they're using Circleback, Otter, Fireflies, things you've never heard of. They're just making up the names at this point. Like, I don't know who's coming up with this stuff. It's just kind of crazy. But I think this endpoint thing is, we used to think the endpoint was like, we could throw it away, it's like a Chromebook, it doesn't matter, it's not important to the company, everything's in the server, everything's in the cloud. Now it's like everything. That person has a copy of everything locally because it's not efficient to do all this processing in the cloud and server side. And they're trying to make all these documents. They got Claude controlling the computer, you got computer use agents, you got browser use agents. You got multi-billion-dollar startups spending every penny to convince them that they have to use this every second of the day, leave their laptop on. And how do you know if that person, was it that person? Was it that person's Perplexity browser? Was it that person's Claude? Was it that person? ChatGPT came out with managed agents like yesterday, and today GPT 5.5 came out. It's just like never ending.
See, what's your 2 cents on that?
Yeah. So I think from my perspective, like not talking about the technology in specific, but basically there are 3 things that like are going to affect on it is the sovereignty piece of it. Think about where a month ago, where Switzerland, out of all the countries in the world, Switzerland, we associate them with neutrality. Switzerland is saying that I will not be using Microsoft products. Switzerland. That throws something in the air. Like that is what like we need to be thinking, why? So this is a sovereignty is going to be, that is the name of the game for the future. That's the first part of it. And related to sovereignty is definitely the privacy piece. So I'll equate it to, I know like maybe some of you are not old enough to realize this, but where we used to make sure like any app that we, or like any web application, not an app, web application used to only work in Internet Explorer. There was a browser called as Internet Explorer for the people like who don't know this. So IE, it is called as IE. Yeah, don't know, like I don't want to judge anybody, so I'm just trying to get in. So Internet Explorer was the corporate web browser. Like if you want to run it on a Chrome or any other thing, you can't. So that control never worked. That control never worked. So like if you think that like I'm going to tell my employees, okay, don't log into ChatGPT and put in employee information, don't put into Claude, or like, it's not going to work. So you cannot control people, like where like as much as it is. So that is where the endpoint, that becomes that is going to be the new war that is going to happen, who is going to control the endpoint part of it. So that is where like I see the privacy part. And the third, which majority of the people don't realize that like this is going to change, and which is a very, very scary piece onto it, is the OT, the operational technology part of it. Because we have, like there is everybody talking about these computers, what is there in the laptop, people getting that one in. But like think about Mythos, think about a water purifier plant, think about your daily supply of water coming in. And like think about the, not even 0 day, it is a 50-year day vulnerability on this OT because nobody concentrates on it. That is where the challenges are. That is what is the biggest security risk that we are facing.
Awesome. I think it's a lot to unpack, but this is a good segue to the next topic I wanted to bring. With all the changes that we talked about in technology, in behavior, in the environments, geopolitical, everything. So let's move that to, like, we do have these changes, like how we translate these changes to the role of a CISO. How roles is evolving. So what do you think that the CISOs these days spend in most of their days with all these changes happening? I'm going to go with Nicholas this time first.
I think you have to do it based on your company. Some companies, they have like 10-year-old problems where their biggest problem is getting logs into the SIEM. And CISO's like, I don't have my logs in the SIEM. I need an application inventory. The reality is, like, that's their biggest problem, and that's a different job than what I would want personally. And but you can't go into that job and say, hey, we're gonna go do all the futuristic stuff and be on the bleeding edge. If the company doesn't want it, they don't care. It's not gonna make a difference to them. And I think for CISOs, the job is different now for each company you're at. At some companies, what I'm seeing is, like, to survive and to really thrive in the role, you have to take a much more proactive role on how security makes a big difference and trust makes a difference in the company's go-to-market, in their business, because it matters. It matters to customers, the security of the product. You know, like, to a lot of what you're saying is customers care. They want to know, how can they trust your company's product and your business? How can your consumers trust it? And so security can't just be like, I say no to everyone, it's everyone's fault we got hacked, how dare they, you know, like, but there, you think it's crazy, but, like, I have friends, you know, I hate to say they're my friends, but they say stuff like that, and I just can't imagine how long that's gonna last. And I think I'm a very pragmatic person. If you want to secure a company, you have to have a job. So if you don't have a job, you can't secure it. If a CISO wants to last and survive and thrive as a leader in the executive team, they need to bring some ideas, not just some concerns. You can't just show up to every leadership meeting and say, everyone's making the company more insecure. I think there's a real opportunity now that maybe there wasn't before. Your security team can do a lot and get a lot done now without relying on the engineering team and making use of these tools. It's scary, it's different, it's not the same job. We can't just make policies all day. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and I think for that, and to do things differently in security than, you know, we were doing before. You can't manage risk if no one listens to you. And I think that's what you were saying earlier, where it's like you have to have some kind of influence and you have to be at the table. If a CISO isn't at the table, it's like they don't exist. The business is just gonna move on, you know? Their strategy is like, make money, get rich. That's like pretty much business strategy, whether it's 3 years or 5 years, you know? It's gonna boil down to that. And they have to pay salaries. Yeah, and they have to pay your salary and they have to pay your, you know, and so that's why I think, how can you help? And I think there's a lot of opportunity to do that now. And I would say, having worked with many different kind of folks in the private sector and public sector, they're not all trying to destroy everything. Like, but they do want someone, they want a partner who actually listens to. You'd be surprised, like, what does our company do? What are we trying to accomplish in the next year? What is our most important thing from a go-to-market, from a product perspective? And then as a security leader, as a CISO, you can think about, okay, how your team and how your function helps with that. How do you help increase velocity, help the engineering team take advantage of the best and greatest and of what is out there versus slow them down? I mean, look, for me, I want to have a job, so I want them to be successful and make lots of money. Otherwise, I'll have to find a new job, you know, and I don't want to be looking for a new job. So that's kind of it.
No, that's a very, very good input. Like, where, like, I'll try to make it not in terms of what it needs to be done, but like I'll give it a real life example. There are always, like, you have a group of friends, right? Like, where everybody, like, irrespective of the gender, and like there is always one friend like who comes in and says, let's do this craziest thing in the world. That is your CEO. And like there is always one guy, like, or one person, like guy or a girl, like one person who says, no, this will kill us, this is what it is. That's your CISO. But like there is always that third person who say, maybe we can do this, but if we can limit it to this particular thing, that is the person who always finds that ground, middle ground, and that is what I want that CISO to move from that fourth to the third person, because the first person, the craziest part of it, the CEO, is not going to change. Because as you said, the businesses are there to make money. They will have the craziest one, and they want to get it done, and risks are the last thing that they wanted to be. So move from the fourth friend to the third friend. That's my advice to CISOs.
That's fantastic. I'll tell a story that's a bit like this. So the first time I became an executive of the Canadian arm of a global company. The global CIO was in Canada, and he said, "Jack, welcome to the table." Gave me all kinds of advice, all of which I've long since forgotten except for one. Our number one role is to never be in the business prevention business, right? Back then I was just looking after IT. No one was really worried about security. Of course, we had firewalls, but only sort of. Right? It wasn't as obviously a big a deal, but it's really stuck with me. So when I think about what does a CISO need to do, right? Now, there's a little bit of a difference. Obviously, size of company, what's your role? I mean, I tend to hold some unpopular opinions. If the role is still exceptionally technical, you're getting your hands dirty, you have to ask yourself, are you really operating as a CISO or a director or even VP of security, right? Your CISO, to the points that my colleagues have made here, has to be speaking in a business language. Has to, right? I haven't configured a firewall in probably 15, 20 years, right? I probably won't. I'm not if I really had to, I'm sure I could watch some YouTube and do that. But that's not my job anymore. My job is to help the leadership of thousands of businesses that want my advice and help them navigate what security they absolutely have to have and avoid making security being the prevention of business. What are the right levels of controls? What do we really, really need to do? What are the guardrails that are non-negotiable? And what are the things that we can kind of ease into a little bit as we sort of experiment, especially with some of the new technologies, AI obviously being a big one. How can we push those boundaries? How can we find our feet in this new technological world without blowing everything up and without saying, no, you can't do it? Because I tell you, that's the fastest way to lose credibility. I'm sure many of us in the room have seen it. The CISO goes into the boardroom, tells the board that they're all idiots, that they don't understand. Here's this, they've got 47 slides on a PowerPoint deck of all kinds of technical jargon and all these, like what Nicholas said, I just want to make some money so that everybody can get paid and the shareholders get a return. Yeah. So how do we do that? Right? So focus on that. And I mean, have your principles. There's lines that can't be crossed. It's fine. But if you're flexible elsewhere, there'll be a lot more open to respecting the lines that you do draw.
Thank you. I think one point, if I can take from the conversation we had, is that the CISO no longer has to prove this is safe or this is protected. I think that the role shifted to just help me understand what is the risk I'm accepting, what is the risk that business wanted to do. So that's make me think about the next question, which is we keep talking about the shared responsibility when it comes to the security. And everybody knows that this is easier said than be done. I'm hearing from my colleague that even changing a technology, the stack in the organization is easier than changing the culture. So in your experience, what have you seen? What is there any organization are more mature in that to shift in the shared responsibility in terms of security? What has been worked? What are the challenges? I'll start with you, Nicola.
I think there's a perfect world where security is everyone's responsibility. That's what all the propaganda says. You know, everyone needs to care, but everyone also has a job too. So like everyone has a responsibility is not the same as everyone is managing and coming up with the best ways to secure the company. You know, someone has to have that job. Just because everyone's responsible for doing the right thing in their job doesn't mean they are a substitute for someone doing a job to secure the company. I think what we've seen work, what has worked well is like giving the engineering team access to tools where they don't have to wait on someone from my team to explain a vulnerability that we found in the source code that needs to be fixed, and giving them access in a way that works well for them, that is native to how they work, and giving them access to that information. So it's not something we just, I don't know, send them a massive spreadsheet with like 10,000 rows and hey, go fix these, and then they have to go talk to a person because we just don't have time. I don't have a big team. We're only a 250 person company, and we just have to get stuff done. And people, what I've found is a lot of the people on the team want to do the right thing. They do need to be given the tools and resources and kind of the ownership to do that. And so we don't hoard information, that's for sure. We find whatever ways we can give access to different teams, whether that's giving the sales engineering team access to our kind of trust documentation for providing assurance, because we're a B2B business, and so that they can self-serve when they need to respond to RFPs. They don't come to me, they don't come to my team, they're not waiting on us. Pre-approved responses they can generate and provide themselves, and then they're a lot happier, I think, to do the right thing when they're given the right tools, because I could say like, hey, you have to do the right thing, it's your job, why don't you go figure it out? And then I won't have a job, so.
I think where the world is going in like majority places is like security is definitely a shared responsibility, but like security is a CISO accountability. There is a difference between that like responsibility and accountability part of it. And like the CISO should start taking the accountability, and that is where it is going in. And like when we talk about like everybody should do the right thing, I think CISO is also being expected that like you will make it ID10T proof, like any of the systems that like there are ID10T proof. So it is no longer that thought that like, oh, somebody clicked on this link, like, so it is not my problem. No, like where, like how did that even come in? Where with the advent of with the advanced technology that is coming in, like that accountability is growing harder and harder, and like it is like the responsibility is shared by everybody on the table, but like when something happens, okay, what is your response is like the rest of the leadership team is looking at them.
Yeah, 100%. I would also, you can look at it a bit like a partnership as well versus a shared responsibility, right? So one of the things that boards and excos understand probably better than any of us is risk, right? They are managing business risks all the time. Security is just another type of risk. So, I go back to what I was saying before, make it accessible, give your board and your executive committees touchstones that they can grab onto and understand. It's obviously a challenge because, as you make it more and more accessible, some of the nuance gets lost, the real risk could get lost. Sometimes you've got to dip everybody's toe into the technical a little bit, but by giving people that context, trust that they will understand what that risk is. Again, if you've got a good exco and board process, all those decisions will get documented, but as we were just saying, you hold the accountability of it regardless of who makes the decision, which means when it goes wrong, and it will go wrong, you're on the line. So don't try and deflect. That's probably one of the quickest ways to make sure that once the crisis is done, you're not going to be there. I've seen that too many times where the IT lead or the security lead spends all their time in the middle of an incident going, it wasn't my fault, it wasn't my fault. Nobody wants to hear that, just how we're going to fix it. Take the responsibility, take the accountability. Here's what went wrong. Here's what we're going to do to make sure that at least this doesn't happen again, and just get a little bit better at expressing those risks so that your partners in cybersecurity risk, being your board members, your executive committee, if you do it right, your CFO is going to be one of your biggest champions. They may not understand anything that you and your team talk about from a technical point of view, but they will understand that risk probably better than anybody else. So if you do it right, get them on side, it's game changing, right? And that's advice I give all the time. Get whoever's in charge of finance on your side, take them to lunch, make sure they understand, build that bridge, you'll get a lot further.
You got me on the CFO being your biggest champion. I'm not going to have any problem proving the budget going forward. Okay, but I think let's have a quick round table, 1 or 2 sentences each, please. What is the one thing that the leaders and the security professionals in the room need to focus in the next 12 months? Let's go with you first, Casey.
I think it is always about building trust. It is building trust that's the most important thing, and for that, you need to really talk to people and stop using jargons, stop using tech jargons with anybody else. Where let's have the conversation in the other people's language, so that you build trust, you put across your point, and that is where we can have a real conversation onto it.
Jack?
All right, I'll go back to kind of where I started. I think it's know what your attack surface is, your inventory, focus on the basics, right? We talked a little bit about endpoints. I forgot who mentioned it. It's one of the, that's probably a place that's going to change. It's not a one and done, right? At least once a year, you need to be evaluating this stuff. And it's really not about the organization that can prevent every single cyber attack. It's the ones that can respond the quickest and most effectively that will survive the long term.
Learning. I think everyone needs to spend a lot of time learning. The technology industry is super invested, whether we like it or not, to change how we're using it, and how technology is working in big companies and small companies, anyone who has access to it. And because of that, there's just a lot to learn. A lot's changing. It's going to look different a few months from now. It'll look different a year from now. A lot of the process and sort of the communications and human aspects of it, those are evergreen, the collaboration and the trust. But I think there's a lot to learn. And even if you think other people are experts and you're not an expert about whether it's AI in your company or something else, it's not true. Nobody, everyone's new to it. Everyone starting now, there's a great chart that I see go around which breaks down the entire population of the world into a grid. And if you look at the percentage of people who even use, say, ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini on a daily basis, it's a single-digit percentage of the world population. If you look at who's actually using it to do anything minorly productive on a daily basis, a basis point of a basis point, it's all new. That everyone can start learning, getting access to this stuff, and you don't wait for someone else to deputize you to become an expert in anything. You can become an expert in anything you want. If you start today, 12 months from now, you would have spent 365 days learning about it. And I think in security, there's so much opportunity for us to get ahead of things if we're actually, kind of involved there. There's a lot of lessons learned from when cloud was being pushed on everyone and the adoption came around. There were people who legitimately fought tooth and nail to be we're not putting that in AWS. Where are they now? They're in AWS somewhere probably in the cloud. And I think we can do something different here. We can take time, learn, figure this out. What does this look like? And how is it going to help us? How is it going to destroy our lives? And kind of, we just take it day by day.
Awesome, amazing. Don't forget about the basic. build trust, and learn and learn and learn. So these are my 3 takeaways for today's conversation. I really enjoyed the panel. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening, and thank you, and have a great rest of the day.
This mic is me and Andrew are both doing it. Okay, everyone, we are coming to the stage with prizes and the prize cards. And what a fast day. Thank you all for hanging out until the very end. Thank you to our panelists. I appreciate them saying yes. So now let's wrap it up with some fun. The bar is still open. If anybody needs a drink ticket, our sponsors are gone. You can just grab them from our registration desk. I'm going to have Andrew help me with this because we could be here forever with me trying to translate names. And we need the music, Mike. See, maybe we're like KC and everyone's too young to know what this music's from. All right. Test. All right, you can use this one.
All right. Do we have Family Feud in Canada? I think we do. Okay, great. All right, let's get this show on the road then. Fast Money.
I think it's The Price is Right, not Family Feud.
This one's Family Feud.
Oh.
It transitions to Price is Right.
Okay.
Mike has a beautiful playlist for prizes.
All right, we have a lot of cards and a lot of people that left, so
The odds are in your favor. Let's get
Yes.
started. So let's start off. We're going to start off. We have a number of gifts that are virtual. Some of them are e-gift cards. Some of them didn't make it, courtesy of Canada Post, UPS, or FedEx. So we're going to start with, this is a physical gift, but it's going to be sent to you. So it's going to be mailed to you. The sponsor will be in touch in the next week. It's from Fastly. It's a Yeti cooler, $100 value. This will be mailed to you.